after giving your full presentation. We call back for your second visit. So we're excited to hear from you. We're gonna review with you two presentations we're looking forward to, and one is a 10-minute presentation, and the second presentation is a 90-second presentation. And I'm going to go over just some of the instructions for the 10-minute presentation. We'll go ahead and listen to that from you, and then we'll pause, and then we'll go to the 90-second presentation session. And so with that, again, congratulations. You've been called back after giving your full presentation for the second visit. This visit, you will be asked to speak only about the ethical aspect of the problem and to explain why your solution successfully handles all the ethical issues that are presented. And you will have exactly 10 minutes, and there'll be, in this case, there'll be no Q&A, no questions and answer session. You may not use slides or video, and you probably don't want to have more than 2 or 3 members of your team conduct this presentation. And so right now, my clock is showing I'm on the West Coast, 10:18. And so 10 minutes, if you're ready, if there are any questions, are there any questions? Then we'll go ahead and start the clock as of now for your 10-minute presentation.
All right. Good morning, Philip Morris Associates, and thank you again for having us back after yesterday's presentation. So we're here today to give you a shorter presentation, which will be strictly about the ethical issues raised by your product, IQOS e-cigarettes. I'm here with my colleagues, Marygek and Andrea Rosas, and we'll be mentioning 3 important points during this shorter presentation. First, we'll talk about the care and responsibilities that Philip Morris should consider taking. Then we'll mention the challenge that this case raises, which is the need to do what is best for the greater amount of people. And lastly, we will talk about the ethical risks of promoting smoking in regards to the current COVID-19 pandemic. So I will start with the first point, the care and responsibilities that Philip Morris should consider taking in the future. We mentioned in yesterday's presentation that your mission statement is based on a theory holding that moral action centers on interpersonal relationships and care, or benevolence as a virtue. It was indeed changed in 2016 as part of a major business transformation, a move away from cigarettes and other combustible tobacco products and toward healthier, smoke-free alternatives to nicotine delivery. The goal of this change was, and is still today, to have by 2025 at least 40 million of adult consumers to stop smoking and to switch to one of the alternatives. And so part of this solution is the IQOS e-cigarette device. Your company marketing this e-cigarette as a better alternative to smoking cigarettes. However, and as we mentioned yesterday, our research and a study from the University of California, San Francisco, showed that the IQOS device has a negative effect on pulmonary and immune function, showing no improvement from the traditional smoking method. And this, to us, represents an issue on the corporate social responsibility aspect. These practices are not in agreement with the stakeholder theory, which we believe is relevant to the current situation. Whether IQOS gives customers a wrong impression that it is safer than regular tobacco cigarettes, or affects the secondhand smokers who inhale all sorts of particles and toxins present in the vape aerosol, it is not in accordance with the mentioned theory, which takes in consideration anyone who has a vested interest in the dealings of PMI. So I'd like to briefly give you a couple of facts about e-cigarettes according to the Harvard Medical School. First, nicotine is highly addictive and can affect the developing brain, potentially harming teens and young adults. And even some nicotine-free e-cigarettes have been found to contain nicotine. Then, some substances found in e-cigarette vapor have been linked to an increased risk of cancer, and we know that teens who vape are more likely to begin smoking cigarettes. There is also a history of explosions and burns that have been reported with e-cigarettes while recharging the devices due to defective batteries. And lastly, vaping during pregnancy could obviously harm a developing fetus. So with that being said, hemp cigarettes would have a much more positive impact on those 2 stakeholders mentioned earlier, but also on other ones. Governments benefiting from a high demand from hemp/CBD cigarettes and the taxes that would eventually result from the sales would find a new important source of revenues and a potential increase in the GDP. Investors would see new opportunities for financial returns, while employees on the other side would potentially feel more relieved not to sell a harmful product anymore. And lastly, additional suppliers and vendors on top of the tobacco growers and vendors that would convert to growing hemp would add more jobs in the economy. Now, you might wonder why we tackle e-cigarette why we tackle e-cigarette products such as IQOS, but not hemp or cannabis e-cigarettes. The answer is in the component of the liquid. Hemp e-liquid only contains liquid CBD, while regular e-liquids contains nicotine, which is highly addictive, and propylene glycol and vegetable glycerin, with both potentially leading to inflammation of the lungs over a period of time. Indeed, vegetable glycerin, which is a clear, odorless, and sweet-tasting liquid, is not considered safe to smoke. The Flavor and Extract Manufacturers Association, the FEMA, has found that over 1,000 flavorings are potentially hazardous to the lungs, and vegetable glycerin is one of them. So I will now pass it on to my colleague Marie, who will speak about the challenge raised by this case, which is doing the greater good for the greater amount of people.
Thank you, Martin. So as a major player of society, it is ethical to act in a way that is beneficial to the greatest number of people. And in that sense, we are certain that by moving from traditional tobacco to hemp, you would create an ethical outcome that will do exactly that, benefiting the greatest number of people. And that is why we identified 3 stakeholders that would benefit from the change. First, smokers, second, the environment, and third, you, Philip Morris. So to start off, switching from tobacco to hemp would benefit the health of millions of smokers. Although all smoking is bad for your lungs, hemp has less effects on pulmonary functions and includes safer ingredients in general. Because when we compare tobacco and hemp, CBD cigarettes do not contain additives or chemicals. Regular traditional cigarettes often contain nearly 600 additives, and many of these added ingredients are even more harmful than tobacco itself. Instead, hemp cigarettes only contain naturally ground up hemp flowers. Hemp is also known to have healing effects and helps with anxiety, pain, and depression. And compared to tobacco, hemp does not cause a chemical or physical addiction and has less severe side effects. Besides benefiting smokers, it will also greatly benefit the environment, as hemp is an eco-friendly plant. Research shows that hemp does not require pesticides or herbicides to grow on an industrial scale. That is a huge benefit because pesticides are known to cause illnesses, reduce biodiversity, and contaminate water, air, and soils. Other than that, the plant requires little water, and that is important because the agricultural industry uses about 70% of the world's fresh water supplies. And therefore, we need to find an alternative in the future that is more sustainable. And then lastly, another way that hemp is environmentally friendly is that the seeds of the plant can be used to create a sustainable fuel source made by plants. And in the long run, hemp could be used to help reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. So after pointing out how the first 2 groups, the smokers and the environment, benefits from the change, I will now address the third group that will benefit, and that is actually you, Philip Morris. Just by looking at the environmental factors that I just stated, there is a potential for you to enter new emerging industries and markets. By introducing hemp in your portfolio, you would come across as very responsible in the public's eye, and you would stand up to your own mission statement. That will potentially attract new customers and also new talent, as you can become a favorite employer. So now, after showing you how switching to hemp will benefit the greatest number of people, I will hand it over to Andrea, who will address the ethical risks of promoting tobacco in times of COVID-19.
Thank you, Marie. With it being more than a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, cigarette companies like yourself, PMI, have made questionable marketing decisions about your heated tobacco products. Philip Morris International, our consulting firm, would wish for you to reconsider the continuance of marketing your new heated tobacco products during the COVID-19 crisis. With the information gathered, Philip Morris International has marketed its e-cigarettes in a multitude of global markets during the pandemic. Examples of this include PMI offering specials such as free trials of heated tobacco products for up to a month in at least 11 countries, and Philip Morris Mexico promoting a new version of the IQOS e-cigarette with an advertisement stating, "Try the latest model, now that you're spending more time at home." You pushing the IQOS e-cigarette to the public as a healthier alternative would be considered a great stride in achieving your mission statement. It is contentious as there is evidence indicating that the IQOS device's vapors having comparable toxicity to traditional smoking, making them a no better alternative to conventional tobacco cigarettes. The ethical concerns of these promotions is that they are both misleading and endangering the public of these heated tobacco products. Public health experts warn that smokers and e-cigarette users face a greater risk for severe illness when confronted with COVID-19. There is conclusive evidence that smoking increases the risk for respiratory infections, weakens the immune system, and is a major cause of chronic health conditions that increase the risk of COVID-19. With Indonesia being the second largest tobacco market in the world by retail value, the country is more susceptible to greater risk with COVID-19, as there is approximately 91 million smokers in the country and PMI employing 28,858 Indonesians. Philip Morris International should have more of a direct role in prioritizing the livelihoods of Indonesians as we play a significant role in Indonesia's GDP and employment. While it may seem irrelevant to bring up the 1999 lawsuit from the US, those who fail to learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. This lawsuit against tobacco companies like yourself took nearly 50 years when the US public realized that health risks associated with smoking. When PMI entered Indonesia in 1998, it was in some way in response to the anti-tobacco lash received in the US. Currently, you are beginning to feel that backlash through new tariffs in Indonesia. One way or another, you will have to help the Indonesian government to pay medical costs. Thus, now is the time to move towards a less toxic cigarette before you face similar legal actions and government restrictions. Luckily for you, PMI, there is a surgence in new technology in the hemp cigarette market. Similar to the IQOS heated tobacco product, there's a rising popularity in hemp CBD vaporizers that use the concentration of CBD extracted from hemp and showcase themselves as a safer alternative to traditional tobacco cigarettes. It may be daunting for a company with such a prolific reputation to make the first move in this market, but there are companies that have gained success in international markets, such as Medical Marijuana Incorporated and their subsidiary Hemp in global markets such as Brazil and Mexico, and another company being Bluebird Botanicals and their outreach in Australia and the UK. To conclude, in order to prevent a problematic future that can arise if your company Philip Morris continues to promote the IQOS heating tobacco product, the company must enact in a way that is caring, responsible, and beneficial for the greatest good of society, especially under the precedented times of the pandemic. With our recommendation of investing and integrating yourself into the hemp cigarette market, you can successfully stride in achieving your mission statement. Thank you, Philip Morris Associates. Our consulting firm, JCBG, look forward to hearing from you about taking the next steps in our proposition.